please give a warm welcome to Dan, who will tell us about platform engineering.
Good morning. Happy to be here on stage. Platform engineering is hard and we're doing it wrong. I feel like this little angry baby here. This is my talk on platform engineering. I have a lot of messages on it. And a couple of nights ago, me and my brain had a conversation before going to sleep. I was like, hey, you're going to sleep? Yeah, please shut up. Your title is clickbait. It's like, yeah, I know, it's kind of bold, but at least it got you here, and I promise not to be that ranting, but I have a lot of messages, as I said, on this topic because I think it's a really important one. My name is Dan, I come from Efficode, I work as a consultant, I help teams and companies build platforms right now. I'm also mostly interested in the higher levels of the stack, so not necessarily all the deep down things, maybe you can feel that from my talk here as well. So platform engineering, it's really taking off in the recent years. I believe that 2023, we're talking a lot of platform engineering. I see like we have 3 or 4 talks just on this subject alone. And I was wondering, actually, how many are doing this? So can I get a raise of hands? How many is actually running services in production on a platform in your company? Yeah? And how many of you are considering going into this platform journey or are kind of trying to build a platform right now? All right. So I think we are maybe in the early adopters, early majority, because a lot of us here is actually also like on the front of things. At least that's what I think that we are. But just to get a little bit of context on what brought us here to platform engineering, I want to take you a little bit back in times and see how we have had these collaboration modes throughout the years. So first, traditionally, maybe still a lot of companies, including yours, is still doing this kind of where we have development teams and an operational team, the traditional way of doing stuff, where development team pushes changes up to the operations team. Maybe they have a lot of queues on work here. Eventually, they will take your changes, push it to production. Hopefully, there will be some kind of feedback back to the operations team. And if they are really, really nice, they will share that back to the development team. We also need to transport a lot of information in order to tell the operations team what to do with our binaries, right? So does this scale? Well, with the introduction of agile development teams back in the years, we suddenly saw a lot of iteration, and that actually exploded kind of the tempo of changes. And therefore, the operations team needs to put out this wall in order to keep the stability of whatever they were in charge of, because they had a lot of work, and also the feedback loops kind of diminished here. So back in 2009, we had this term coined, DevOps. So what is a DevOps team? There's a lot of different ways of looking at this, but in my head, it's a cross-functional team that has all the capabilities to build, ship, and run their software, and also do the changes on the infrastructure. So they actually had the responsibility all the way from chip design up until the color of the order button in the web page. They also had to have all that information carried to them because they had the full responsibility in this area here. So does this scale? Well, with this mantra, you build it, you run it, you build it, you run it, all the things, all the layers, that actually requires a lot of capabilities, a lot of engineering maturity. And maybe you have that in some teams in your company, but to have that across all teams is kind of hard, right? It's a lot of complexity and cognitive load that we put on our DevOps teams here. So with the introduction of platform teams, and some of you have probably already read the Team Topologies book, that's where I at least got this thing here about platform engineering. We have still these development teams, but now we have kind of separated the concerns and the responsibilities such that development teams produces the change and put that into the environment that they're responsible for. They still have the ability to run it just on the application level. But we have a platform team that sets up a some interfaces towards the development team that they can consume, self-service consume, and then you have kind of this shared responsibility model here. And of course, the platform team also needs to learn about what is the needs and requirements for the development teams in order to kind of do this serving of whatever services that they provide. So does this model scale? Would we succeed in this? This is some of the questions that I'm asking myself right now. So, and I think as a consultant, I always have this one, well, it depends, right? So, but just to get a little more into what a platform is, my good colleague Sander always has this annoying question: what is the platform? And he bogs me down with this question all the time, and also the teams that we work with. And I find that this definition from Evan Butcher from ThoughtWorks back in 2018, he said, a digital platform is a foundation of self-service APIs, tools, service, knowledge, and support, which are arranged as a compelling internal product. Autonomous delivery teams can make use of the platform to deliver product features at a high pace with reduced coordination. I love this one, and I kind of have also a little model on top of that. At least that's how I have my mental model on it. So if we have developers on top here, we are creating some kind of self-services here that should help developers do whatever they need on an infrastructure level, maybe, whether that's cloud, on-prem, mainframe, embedded, you name it. And they need to interact with these services through some kind of interfaces. It might just be docs or support. We tend to typically forget that sometimes, but also like more programmatical API interfaces such as APIs and tools. And in order for us to kind of succeed with some of the capabilities that we have as developers, that we need to build our software, we need to ship it, and we need to run it, monitor it, observe it, all these kind of things. And there should be some kind of visibility here in my head that the lower that you get in the stack, the less you should actually care about this as a development team, right? So if you bought into this and you have like, this is great, I think that will work for us, I must convince my boss about this. You have a nice boss, he's like super busy, but he's like, yes, make a platform that is great. Maybe that's all the vision that you get to go with. I've seen that, that's what you get. And so you are maybe, you come from an infrastructural background maybe, and you are a team of four, say 4 people, and the organization that you have, your organizational landscape is vast. You have 3 or 4 CI/CD pipelines across your organization. You have maybe the same with artifact management. Clouds, you are on 3 different clouds. Some teams are in safe, some are trying to get out of safe. It's a big, beautiful mess, you could say. So where would you start with this? Well, as a team, you might start with a mission. What are you trying to do as a team? This is not a good mission in my head. The platform should reduce cost and fit every team's needs. That's typically what I see, is that we have so little, we don't know what we do with IT, so well, we could just reduce the cost, right? And we should do that for all the teams. In my head, I would rather have something like a mission that we will create, maintain, and evolve an internal developer platform for containerized workloads. That means that I have actually taken into consideration that we're not doing this from the mainframe from the start. We're not doing this for serverless. Let's just let them work. And the purpose of the internal developer platform is to provide a path for teams in the whatever domain. Maybe teams under the boss that I got this support, and then we can tackle the teams on another level at another time. To become more productive with a measurable improvement in time to value, such that we actually try to link our efforts with whatever business needs that we as a company have, because in the end it will relate to our business, it should. A way to encapsulate this is that you as a platform team should maybe consider creating a team charter. So this could be a written document in your Confluence page, in a GitHub, wiki, whatever. We'll say, welcome to our team. This is who we are. Our mission is this that I had before. We want really much to collaborate you. Here are our Slack channels. If you want to come by, then come by, grab a cup of coffee with us, all these kind of things. Also, for the next 3 months, we are probably working on this such that you have a transparent way of communicating with the teams around you. This is actually not only for the platform teams. You could do that across teams overall in the organization. It improves transparency and what you're working with and how you want to have your team APIs work for you. All right, so now you're this team here, and you have found your mission, and you want to say, okay, where should we start with this? Well, let's build the foundation first. The customers or the developers that we need, well, we need some kind of foundation, right? Let's say that we are still doing something on a Kubernetes cluster. We need to have something set up. So we begin in this area here. We call this the kind of the fat foundation. First, we need to have some policies because we want to have some guardrails in terms of what developers can and cannot do on our platform. Oh, we need to think about multi-tenancy as well because, well, we need to have different teams on this. Of course, we also maybe need to think about multi-cloud support because eventually we will venture into other kind of cloud providers or something like that. And for that, we need load balance and service mesh and all these kind of things. So suddenly we have just been doing a lot of these foundational work. And I think we should beware of this rabbit hole here. The bunny here, look at it, it's really happy. I mean, we as engineers would love to build this. It's shiny new tech. We don't actually need any developers on this. We could just dig deep down in this and stay here all the time. But we are on these kind of levels here. We are on the foundational levels on the cloud, and we have not done anything yet for our developers. So when our boss comes and asks us, well, what have you been doing? You can say, well, listen, we have 7 clusters up and running across AWS, Azure, Alibaba. We have 1 million lines of code, YAML, or Go, or whatever, across 3 static environments. We just need some services running in production, and that's the next thing that we will tackle. And then hopefully, your boss will ask this annoying question. Why should I fund you? I mean, you promised that you will help our business become more productive and increase the time to value. But what have you been doing the last half or a whole year? And I mean, we have built up a lot of complexity here. And I think a complex system, that's from Johan that showed me this a couple of minutes ago, that a complex system designed from scratch never work and cannot be made to work. So maybe you have just have all this code, and code is a liability. You cannot get rid of it again. Tomorrow is our legacy. So I really think that scale is not a startup problem. We shouldn't design for scale up front. We should think a lot about the developers that we need to interact with, consider them as customers, and figure out what our market fit is here. So that when we are on these levels here, instead we should probably start up with some kind of capabilities. Just figure out the smallest thing that you can do for your developers on their level. Take that and maybe, just maybe, write some documentation first. You need it anyway at some point because when your APIs are down or something, that will save you. And then, of course, then we can dig it down and see what this path is. To me, that's a thin, viable platform instead of doing all the foundational work first. So when you consider whatever we do, is this valuable? I'd say I got this from a book called Empowered, that first off, we should think about, is it viable? Is it actually meeting the needs of our developers? So think about doing a lot of this discovery work. Think about trying to figure out their opportunities, which is needs, desires, pains, these kind of things. I have a QR code in the end where I'll share some of my resources for some of these discovery questions here. So if we kind of meet the viability in this, well, it should also be feasible for us. It should be easy for us to deliver to developers. So fast prototyping is really good. Get that feedback loop up and running. Again, if we have these big batches and we haven't talked and delivered something, well, then it probably is hard to deliver. Is it usable? Can the value easily be experienced by developers? If it's an API, have I written the good documentation that comes along with it? And only then, if we actually have all these three here, then I would say, then yes, then it's probably valuable, but you need to get that feedback loop up and running, right? Let's talk a bit about abstractions, because we did a survey a couple of years ago, where last year, something like that, where I actually asked what is the most important thing for a platform to provide. I didn't get many responses, but all the ones that we got was, we need to make abstractions. So that's actually, at least in our heads, a big part of this, right? This is not a good abstraction. This is just exposing your system to your developers. But it's a really easy way to make a CLI faster if you want to. Instead, I think good abstractions hide some kind of complexity that you have underneath, right? Such that developers shouldn't care about what services I interact with. Think of a CLI where I actually don't care what it does underneath and what infrastructure it interacts with. Just a concern here. Beware that abstractions can be leaky. Not always can we ensure that these abstractions are like pure abstractions. So if you are going to have pure abstractions, I think a guy from Adobe wrote a really good blog post on that pure abstractions is a trap, and yeah, consider that. So that also means that when we have done this through our interfaces programmatically, then we shouldn't go and brag about it just afterwards and say, hey, look on all these things that I have hidden from you. Now listen, we got this load balance and blah, 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 blah. It's okay that you want to share this, but maybe then write a conceptual documentation on what is underneath for those that is really interested in it. I'm not saying that everyone should not be interested in the stack. I'm just saying that generally you want to have the abstraction layer high, right? I believe that good abstractions also lowers kind of coupling. So it should be easier for us to keep the contract with the developers and then change some of the things underneath us whenever we see fit. It might be because we as platform team have easier ways to working with our platform, and therefore we want to change it. But I think from a developer point of view, it would be awesome that I don't need to change stuff whenever the platform needs to change it. And of course, that might be hard sometimes, and then we have breaking changes, right? So I think we saw this iceberg model yesterday. In my head, it is a really good way of making a discussion model where we could say, well, given like the concepts or the capabilities that we're talking about, the interfaces that we have, the foundation, and the infrastructure, how do we see the as-is situation in our company right now? Maybe we can do that as a platform team, try to take this and say, okay, right now our teams need to master this concept. It could be GitOps, could be 12-factor apps, something. And they also need to master Argo CD, if that's the GitOps thing, or maybe other kind of frameworks. It could be a CLI that we have provided for them. In order to do so, they need to understand some kind of services that we have on the foundation. And for some reason, they also need to know about service mesh or networking in a lower layer that we don't necessarily, and we should ask ourselves, why do we need that? So maybe this can be used as a model, or again, a discussion model for teams to actually to think about this, reason about it, such that we can have a plan for saying, okay, maybe we didn't hit that the right way. Maybe we should actually do something and have some actions on trying to take some of these down the layers such that it's easier for us as development teams to work with the platform. So I think that could be a model to do this, and you can also give it in the hands of developers and ask them, how do you see this platform? How much of these services and interfaces and foundation, where are they in your head? And there's a reason why the upper part is much lower, because there shouldn't be so much there compared to what's underneath, right? So to sum up, I would say, first off, you need to have a clear mission and align on it and be transparent about it and communicate and go back to it. Don't forget that it's a live document. When you get it is of course not the how questions that this is answering, right? So it should be kind of stable. But if you need to revisit it, do it. And meaning aligning on it also means that it's not necessarily only you as a team, also with your boss and your stakeholders and so on, your developers especially. And again, be aware of this rabbit hole. This foundation here is where we just keep stuck in here is really a thing to be aware of in my head. Because until we have something in the hands of users and our developers, we are building stuff on assumptions. The only assumption that is a good assumption is that our assumptions are wrong. So, for whatever reason that we're building on these assumptions, and we're not giving it to the developers, we will probably just have code as a liability, complex systems, so on. And make these usable abstractions. I believe they're kind of hard to do the right way. That is actually the promise that I see as a platform, that you can make the right abstraction and have this kind of contract such that developers doesn't necessarily need to know what is below our interface. Thank you. That was it.